Welcome to the channel. My name is Wells, and you are watching Do Things Wells. Hey, the next project with this Kubota 4500 is to replace the rear brakes. It's wet disc brakes. So the brake pedal travel is pretty good. And the adjustment doesn't look that far off on the turnbuckle, but you really have to stand on them to get them to stop. So I'm guessing the brake pads or the plates are wore out. But to get that off, or to change them, you need to take this whole axle part off. That means fender comes off, the roll bar has to come off. I'm gonna take this 3-point arm off just for ease. Obviously it's gotta be disconnected there. And the wheel has to come off. So we're gonna get started doing that. I think first I just gotta take the light and some wiring off. I can set that on the seat. I'm planning on putting that fender up on the seat while we're working on it, just to get it out of the way. That way there is no quick connects for the wiring, so that keeps me from having to cut the wires. Then the roll bar. So it's 4 big bolts for the roll bar. Get that off and then lift it down onto the ground. I'll end up jacking up under here, obviously to keep it from tipping over. And then I'll end up using a chain fall to grab a hold of that axle once I loosen all those bolts. Then slide it off. All the oil for back here has to be changed, so we'll drain that. It's about 13 gallons worth. And this is kind of what the brakes look like. So this whole axle piece has to come off. Then this section of the drum, here's where the brake assembly looks like. So you have 3 discs and 2 plates, and then this is a cam plate that actuates, or you got 2 cam plates. But these are really the parts that wear out, are these 5. So that's what I changed. I have some of this stuff. I didn't buy 2 complete sets just to make sure once I do one side, then I'll buy the other. Make sure I have all the right stuff for the other side. Doesn't look too complicated. It's a little bit tedious work, taking all this stuff off and then having to put it all back on. Anyhow, let's get to it. I've taken the roll bar off, laying over here. I got the elephant ear fender off. I got it up on the seat. The wires and stuff are still attached. Got it jacked up on a jack stand and drain the oil out. So just draining a little bit. It's about 12 gallons, I think. And I just changed it recently when I split the tractor. So these are good clean buckets. I put the oil into there and plan to put it back in. I'm gonna pull the wheel off. It doesn't have any fluid in it, so it's not that bad. I'll pull it off, leaning against the wall, and then we'll start taking all these out. I think there's 18 of them. And then we'll see what we get. Got all the bolts off. There are 3 studs that stay in. Here, here, and here. And I got a chain balled up with a strap. I'm guessing on where the center of gravity is on that. When I was loosening it, I didn't have to stick anything in to pry it. Just kind of shook it from the end and she'd come out. A little bit of oil come out the bottom, but most of it's drained. I'm assuming just whatever's a little bit in there. I have it tilted this way, so any leftover stuff that didn't drain out should be going to the left axle and not the right axle. So I'm just gonna pull the rest of that off, or at least try to, and see what we get. So that's down. That's the planetary. Looks pretty good, nice and tight in there. And that's the actual shaft, which should pull out. See how that comes here. And then this whole plate, sorry, from here out is the brake. That comes out. So we'll work on that next. But you can see the shaft in here for the axle shaft. Awesome. So it actually took a bit to get this piece loosened up, not because it has any extra bolts or anything, just it's got a dial pin here and then the 3 studs, and then it was probably Permatex just a little bit that was keeping it. I ended up picking 2 places here and on that other side with like a little fine screwdriver and just getting it open a little bit, and then I was taking this, like, I don't know what is a 1 pound or half pound little sledge, and kind of working my way around until I saw a crack, and then and I was able to get this worked in, just kind of slowly open it up around. And now I'm just gonna lift that off and then we'll see how it disassembles. All right, this is what it looks like from the inside. I already removed 1 pin in the spring. It sits in a taper. It's a little rod that goes across. From there to there, there's 3 of them. And then this is the brake lever hooked up to your pedal. It goes to a rod. But if you're looking in there, when you push the brake pedal, it squeezes. Here, let me try to get it better. You can see the gap here gets bigger when it's squeezed. So this is the main plate that squeezes the brake plates together. So I'm going to pull these out, then the nuts, then the lock ring, and that shaft comes out, and then this stuff comes off. All right, this is a part. I ended up not taking these pins out. All this is in here is 6 balls, and they're in indentions, and when the lever is pushed, they ride up on the ramp, and that's what is putting the friction on the plates, squeezing that way. So I didn't need to do that. I am replacing these. You can kind of see that they're wearing out. This side is all wore out, plus there's a groove in here. It's not that bad, but there isn't any I don't know what you call this, where the oil passages go here. Then it's the plate, So this will go down first. This will go down over. Then this plate with the flat edge here and the dials. And then this one over top. You can see where it was all wore out on this side. And not too bad on this side. It's kind of, I'm not sure why they're only wearing on one side. Possibly because the manual says there should be three of the, they call it a friction plate, and then the plate. So this would be the friction plate, and then this would be the plate. Should be 2 of these and 3 of these on each axle, and there's only 2. Now this axle is shared with a much bigger tractor. This is 55 horsepower, and it goes all the way to, if you look on the book, to the 7500, which was 80 horsepower. And so perhaps they use the 3 discs and this one doesn't. The brakes on this tractor, which is the same, almost identical to this one, except it's not 4-wheel drive and the fuel pump's turned down just a little bit. But its brakes are awesome. So if I put this together and it still doesn't brake good, then I'll take it back apart and I'll order that extra disc and plate, or what they call it plate and friction plate, and add one more on each side, and hopefully that'll make it work better. All right, it's back together. One thing I forgot to mention is this is a notch here, and this is a stud basically that goes to this gear, and you have to stick this inside this notch as you're sighting these plates on these 6 studs that go around. A little bit wider here. You line that up. How do you know where this is so that this arm is in the right place? There is alignment marks. You can kind of see them right here and here. So they got to line up, and you put the circle clip back on. And then you can tighten up. Book doesn't have a spec for those, so I just made them fairly tight. Kind of put my knee on here so that it didn't want to roll while I was tightening it up. And nothing big, just a 3/8 drive ratchet. Now I'm gonna put a coat of Permatex all the way around the outside here, and then slide that piece on. And then I'll slide the shaft on. This just has an O-ring. I'll wipe that off, put a little bit of oil on there. So that seal, that O-ring seal, goes up against here. All right, that's slid back on. I forgot to mention that it says these holes here, they can't be blocked. They have to be open for the 2 plates. Have to line up at least 2/3. I have it pretty much 100%. And then when you're sliding this plate on, this has to line up with the gear back there. It moves freely. You can spin this one right here, easy peasy, and you can look right through this hole and just twist it a little bit. Just slide it on. Now to get this seal to seal up, or to close up good, the gasket or the Permatex that I used, I have to put the axle back on to be able to squeeze it in, because there's no bolts that hold this part in. This is kind of, that part, that is what tightens the brake assembly on. So I'll start putting that back on, slide that in, and just tighten it up a little bit. I won't go full tight with the gasket. Let it sit there for a little bit, but get it squeezed in. All right, it's all tightened up. It's whatever, it's 9 bolts and 3 studs. Just take a couple of minutes. And after I did that, I figured I'd put the wheel on. Put the wheel back on. I just set the fender down. It's just sitting here loose. I'm gonna jump over here, pull this fender off, set it up like I did the other one. Take the wheel off. Well, I'm gonna set my jack stands up, and then I'll pull the wheel off and start taking these all off and doing this side. That's about it. I used packing paper to fill the holes in that center housing so that when I clean the gasket, it didn't get inside there. It keeps most of the debris away. I should have mentioned this on the right brake set, but I soaked the brake pads or the friction discs in oil while I was taking the thing apart so that they were nice and lubed up prior to using. I didn't make a recording pulling the axle housing off and the brake assembly, but I cleaned it all up. It looked a little bit worse than the right side. The brake pads were more worn. There was only 2 sets. There was 2 brake pads and 1 plate, or 2 friction plates and 1 plate. The most time-consuming part is actually cleaning the gasket out. It only takes a couple of minutes to pull the axle housing and the brake housing off. But here I am putting it back in. It goes in pretty easy. Obviously the chain ball does most of the work. As this one's going on, you gotta look in here so that planetary lines up. You spin it, and when it goes in, it'll roll in. The finer spline is on the brake where it goes into the rear end. The planetary is pretty big here. It's easy to line up. Now we just throw the bolts in and the studs. Sorry, the nuts. These ones need cleaned off. Better, yeah. It's 101 foot-pounds. Or a couple of chugga-chuggas. Of course, I just lost it. I'll put it on here. I'm just going to pull it tight here, just up against. friction plates were worse on the left side. This side doesn't look too killer bad. My light's not too good, but it's kind of chattery pitted. But you can actually still feel the lip up here, but this side is missing. Oh no, this side looked good too. This side looked okay. This side's pitted, but the other pad, it's totally missing. Both sides. After I got the axle housing on, I threw the wheel on, and I was done for the night. The next video will go over putting the linkage on and how to adjust that, and then getting the brakes set that they're even so one tire isn't braking before the other. Thanks for watching.